Welcome back, everyone, to the Echoes of Ihsan podcast. We're continuing our deep dives into the world of Hadith literature, and today we're looking at Sahih al-Bukhari.
A cornerstone of Hadith, yes.
So important to Islamic tradition, and this time we're going deep into Book 91, accepting information given by a truthful person.
It's a fascinating book, and honestly, such a relevant topic for, anyone seeking knowledge.
Absolutely.
And, especially in our current times when it's so important to be discerning about where you get your information from.
You can say that again.
These hadiths give us such a clear picture of the value placed on truth and trust by the early Muslims.
So true.
I mean, think about it. Their whole way of life was built on the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad.
Right. And those teachings were transmitted orally, generation to generation, relying entirely on the integrity of the people sharing them.
Exactly.
So that chain of trust had to be strong or the message could get distorted.
Absolutely. And that's why the concept of isnad, the chain of narrators, is so central to Hadith studies.
It's like a meticulous historical detective work.
Exactly.
Scholars meticulously traced each hadith back to its origin, verifying the integrity and trustworthiness of everyone in that chain.
Exactly. They really made sure that the knowledge passed down was authentic.
So fascinating. Okay, so let's get into some of these hadiths.
Absolutely.
What kind of insights and stories can we expect from Book 91?
Well, prepare to be transported back to the time of the Prophet and his companions. You'll get glimpses into their everyday lives.
I love that.
How trust was integral to everything they did and the challenges they faced.
Perfect.
Let's start with Hadith 352.
Sounds good.
This hadith beautifully captures the Prophet's compassion. Imagine, there's this group of young men so eager to learn. They'd traveled to Medina just to learn from the Prophet himself. But at the same time, they were missing their families back home.
You know, that feeling of being away from home, right? It's that mix of excitement and longing.
Exactly. And the Prophet, being so perceptive, picked up on this. Instead of urging them to just stay in Medina focused on their studies, he said, go back to your families and stay with them. Teach them what you have learned and instruct them to do good deeds.
Love that.
He wasn't just focused on imparting knowledge, but also on its wider impact, spreading good, strengthening family bond.
Beautiful. He's like, don't just be scholars, be teachers. Share what you've learned. Let your families be the first to benefit.
Exactly. It's a reminder that knowledge shouldn't be a solitary pursuit.
Right.
It's meant to be shared, passed on to strengthen the community.
Okay, so Hadith 352 sets the stage for this whole idea of trust, community, and the wider impact of knowledge.
Absolutely. And speaking of trust, the next two hadiths, 353 and 354, focus on something so central to Muslim life, the adhan, the call to prayer.
The adhan, it's such a powerful sound, even for someone who's not Muslim.
Oh, I agree. It's truly captivating.
What?
So these hadiths tell us about Bilal, the first muezzin chosen by the Prophet himself. His voice became this symbol of trust and reliability for the whole community. Imagine it's the middle of the night during Ramadan, and people are fasting. They need a way to know when to break their fast.
Right.
The Prophet says that even at night, Bilal's adhan is the signal. When they hear his call, they know it's time to eat and drink.
So his voice becomes a guide in the darkness.
Exactly. And it's more than just timing, it's trust.
Right.
The community completely trusted Bilal's accuracy, his adherence to the Prophet's instructions. His adhan was a symbol of unity, of collective reliance.
That's amazing.
And in Hadith 354, we see a similar example with Ibn Maktum, who was known for calling the Fajr prayer before dawn. The Prophet clarifies that people can continue eating and drinking until they hear his call.
So there's this continuity of trust from Bilal's adhan at night to Ibn Maktum's call before dawn.
It shows how trust was woven into their lives, their daily routines, and how that trust created harmony.
It really makes you think about who you trust and how that affects your life.
It does. And speaking of trust, Hadiths 355 and 356 offer a glimpse into something really special. The human side of the Prophet.
The Prophet is a human being.
Exactly. These hadiths show us that even he wasn't infallible.
He made mistakes.
We all do, right? So in Hadith 355, the Prophet is leading the Zuhr prayer, the midday prayer,
Okay.
and he accidentally performs 5 rakats instead of 4. A companion gently points this out, and the Prophet immediately performs 2 prostrations of forgetfulness called sahu to make up for it.
Oh, I didn't know there was a specific ritual for correcting mistakes in prayer.
There is. It's a beautiful demonstration of humility, of acknowledging our human limitations.
So it's not about being perfect, it's about accountability.
Exactly. And in Hadith 356, we see a similar scenario, this time with a companion named Dhul Yadain. The Prophet makes a mistake during prayer. Dhul Yadain confirms it, and the Prophet performs sahu again.
It's amazing that the companions felt comfortable enough to point out the Prophet's mistakes, and even more amazing that he accepted their correction so openly.
It speaks to their mutual trust and respect. He was the Prophet, but he acknowledged his human fallibility, and they trusted him to correct his errors.
Such a powerful example of leadership and humility. What else can we expect from these hadiths?
Well, get ready for a major event in Islamic history. Hadiths 357 and 358 take us to the time when the Qibla, the direction of prayer, changed.
Oh, wow. From Jerusalem to Mecca.
Exactly. Imagine you're in the middle of prayer, facing Jerusalem, as they had been doing for over a year.
Right.
Suddenly, someone arrives bringing news from the Prophet that a revelation has been received. Muslims are now to face the Kaaba in Mecca.
So they changed direction mid-prayer.
Absolutely. They changed direction immediately, showing their complete obedience to this divine instruction.
It's amazing how one truthful individual delivering a revelation could bring about such a massive change.
It truly is, and it reminds us of the importance of trusting the chain of narrators in Hadith.
Just like that community trusted the messenger who brought news about the Qibla change.
Exactly. Muslims today rely on the chain of narrators to make sure the hadiths we follow are authentic.
So this trust is a continuous thread throughout Islamic history.
Exactly.
So we've seen trust play out in receiving revelations, but what about everyday life?
Well, Hadith 359 gives us a great example. It's about the prohibition of alcohol, which was a huge social shift in Arabia at the time.
I can imagine.
So picture this. A companion, Anas bin Malik, is serving drinks made from infused dates to others.
Sounds like a social gathering.
It was. Now, these drinks were likely alcoholic, common in pre-Islamic Arabia. Suddenly, news arrives. All alcoholic drinks are prohibited.
That must have been shocking.
Absolutely. But right away, a companion, Abu Talha, tells Anas to destroy all the jars containing these drinks, and Anas, without question, smashes them.
Wow, immediate action. They didn't even hesitate.
That's how much they trusted the Prophet's teachings.
It reminds me of how much we need to filter the information we receive today, especially with so much misinformation out there.
You're absolutely right. Being discerning is crucial.
Okay, so we've seen how trust permeated the early Muslim community. Are there any individuals whose stories really stand out as examples of this trust?
Absolutely. Hadiths 360 and 361 tell us about Abu Ubaidah, a companion known as Amin the Trustworthy.
Amin. That's a powerful title.
It is. So the Prophet is about to send a representative to the people of Najran, a Christian community. This is a sensitive mission requiring the utmost trust. He announces he'll send someone who is truly trustworthy, and among all his companions, chooses Abu Ubaidah.
Wow, he was chosen for such a sensitive role.
Exactly. And Hadith 361 makes it even clearer. The Prophet declares Abu Ubaidah as the Amin of the nation.
The most trustworthy person.
Yes. This wasn't just about one incident. He was known for his integrity, someone whose word was unquestionable.
It's inspiring to see how someone earned that reputation through consistent actions and integrity.
Absolutely. And it leads us to another important question. How was knowledge preserved and passed down?
Right. How do they ensure accuracy?
Well, Hadith 362 gives us a glimpse into their commitment to knowledge sharing. Umar, who later became the second caliph, had a system with a friend. If one missed a gathering with the Prophet, the other would share everything that was taught.
Oh, wow, that's dedication.
It was. They knew how precious the Prophet's teachings were.
And they basically laid the groundwork for the formal isnad system. Right?
Exactly. They set a precedent for meticulous documentation to ensure authenticity.
Fascinating. Okay, so we've seen a lot about trusting sources, but what about trusting leadership and authority?
Well, Hadith 363 takes on that very issue. It shows the limits of obedience. The story goes, a commander orders his soldiers to enter a fire.
Enter a fire. What?
That sounds crazy, right? Some soldiers were ready to follow blindly, but thankfully the Prophet heard about this.
Yeah.
His response was clear. No obedience for evil deeds. Obedience is required only in what is good.
So he's emphasizing using your judgment.
Exactly. He's saying blind obedience isn't always right.
Wow, that's such a powerful and relevant message. It encourages us to use critical thinking even when we're given instructions.
Absolutely. Now, moving on to Hadith 364 and 365, these shed light on the importance of truthful testimony in Islamic justice.
Okay.
So Hadith 364 sets the scene. Two men present their case before the Prophet.
Right.
Then in 365, we get a case involving a man accusing his son of adultery with his wife.
A serious accusation.
Very. The man wanted the law applied, seeking justice for this supposed transgression. However, the accused son's father steps in, explains he paid a ransom to save his son from being stoned, thinking that was the right punishment.
He took matters into his own hands.
He did. But after consulting religious scholars, he learned that the punishment for adultery differs for men and women. Stoning is for the woman, while the man receives lashes and exile.
So the punishment wasn't what he thought.
Exactly. This changes things. The Prophet, committed to divine law, says he'll judge based on Allah's book, not assumptions. He returns the ransom, sentences the son to lashes and exile following the prescribed punishment.
And the wife.
This is where truthful testimony is key. The Prophet instructs someone to approach her and ask if she confesses. If she does, the punishment is stoning.
It all comes down to her confession.
It does. Sadly, the next morning she confesses, and the punishment is carried out. This hadith, though difficult, highlights the weight of truthful testimony in Islamic justice.
It's a reminder that justice must be based on evidence and a commitment to the truth.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, we've covered some pretty heavy topics. Are there any lighter moments in these hadiths? Some stories showing the Prophet's softer side?
There are. Hadiths 366, 367, and 368 give us heartwarming glimpses into the Prophet's relationships with his companions. They showcase his recognition of their service and trustworthiness.
I'd love to hear those.
Let's start with 366. It's the Battle of the Trench, a tense time for the Muslims. Outnumbered, they're defending Medina. The Prophet needs updates on the enemy's movements.
So he needs someone he can rely on.
Exactly. And time and again, it's Zubair who steps up. He gathers intel, bringing back crucial information. The Prophet calls him his Hawari, often translated as helper or disciple.
Showing their close bond.
Exactly. Then in 367, we see the Prophet's affection for his companions. He's in a garden and instructs someone to guard the gate. As different companions arrive, the Prophet tells the guard to let them in and share the good news that they will enter paradise.
What a beautiful moment.
It is. The companions are Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman, who would all become caliphs after the Prophet's death.
So he's recognizing their righteousness.
Absolutely. And lastly, Hadith 368 shows us a small but telling incident. Umar arrives at the Prophet's home and finds a black slave guarding the entrance. He requests to see the Prophet, and the slave allows him in.
So the Prophet entrusted even the slave with this responsibility.
Exactly. It shows his egalitarian approach. He saw worth in everyone, regardless of social status.
It's a reminder that trust and respect should be given to all. So we've seen a range of stories about trust and its importance.
We have.
What else awaits us in these final hadiths?
Well, Hadiths 369, 370, and 371 delve into the world of messengers. These individuals carried sensitive information, spread the message of Islam, interacted with leaders of other nations.
Messengers were so crucial in a world without our modern communication.
They were the lifeline of communication. Let's start with Hadith 369.
Okay.
The Prophet decides to send a letter to Khosrau, the ruler of Persia, inviting him to Islam.
That's bold. Reaching out at such a powerful ruler.
It was. He instructs the messenger to deliver it through the ruler of Bahrain.
Why Bahrain?
It was a strategic location, a hub for diplomacy, a gateway to the Persian Empire.
I see, a diplomatic channel. So what was Khosrau's response?
Sadly, it wasn't positive. Hadith 369 tells us he tore the letter to pieces, rejecting the Prophet's message.
What a disrespectful act.
It was. The Prophet was deeply angered and prayed for Khosrau and his followers to be torn apart.
Understandable. So the messenger didn't have a successful mission.
No, and the Hadith doesn't say what happened to him, which makes you wonder about the dangers these messengers faced.
They risk a lot to convey the Prophet's message. So what about messengers within the Muslim community itself?
That's where Hadith 370 comes in. It's about the fast of Ashura.
The fast on the 10th of Muharram, right?
Yes. Initially, both Jews and Muslims observed it. The Prophet wanted to ensure everyone understood how to observe it correctly.
Yeah.
He instructed a man to announce to the people that if they'd already eaten on that day, they should fast for the rest of it, and those who hadn't eaten should fast the whole day.
So clear instructions to avoid confusion.
Exactly. It shows his concern for consistency and that messengers played a crucial role in spreading this information.
Okay, and what about our final messenger story?
Hadith 371 tells us about a delegation from the tribe of Abd al-Qais who came to Medina seeking knowledge. They wanted to learn about Islam, the practices that would lead them to paradise, and what was halal and haram regarding drinks.
The big questions.
Absolutely. The Prophet patiently taught them the four pillars of Islam: belief in Allah, prayer, zakat, and fasting.
The foundations of faith.
Exactly. He explained each one, clarifying the concept of belief in Allah. He forbade them from using certain drinking vessels likely associated with alcohol, which was forbidden in Islam.
Showing them a new way of life.
Yes. And before they left, he told them to memorize these teachings and convey them to their people.
They became messengers themselves, spreading the message further.
Exactly. These hadiths highlight the importance of messengers in those times, their role in spreading knowledge and connecting people.
It's amazing how they facilitated communication in a world without instant connection.
Absolutely. Welcome back to our deep dive into Sahih Bukhari, Book 91. We've been exploring the fascinating world of trust and knowledge in early Islam.
It's amazing how these stories from the time of the Prophet are still so relevant today.
Absolutely. They offer us timeless guidance on navigating a world overflowing with information, a world where discerning truth from falsehood can be so challenging.
Speaking of discerning truth, Hadith 372 really stood out to me. It emphasizes paying attention to how knowledge is transmitted, which is more important than ever today.
This hadith focuses on a conversation between two scholars, Ashabi and Tauba al-Ambari. It gives us a glimpse into the meticulousness of hadith transmission.
Okay, so who were these scholars and what were they discussing?
Ashabi was a leading scholar of hadith, known for his rigorous approach to verifying authenticity.
Cool.
Tauba al-Ambari was a student of Ibn Umar, a companion of the Prophet known for his piety and meticulous preservation of the Prophet's teachings.
So we have a chain of knowledge here, from the Prophet to Ibn Umar to Tauba, and then to Ashabi.
Exactly. Ashabi asks Tauba, did you notice how Al-Hasan, another prominent scholar, narrated hadiths from the Prophet?
Interesting. So he's trying to understand Al-Hasan's methodology, his approach to transmitting hadiths.
Precisely. And Tauba's response is fascinating. He talks about how he spent a significant amount of time with Ibn Umar, hoping to learn as much as possible.
Soaking up knowledge from this direct source.
Exactly. But here's the surprising thing. Despite all this time, Tauba only heard Ibn Umar narrate one specific hadith. It was about the permissibility of eating the meat of a mastigar.
A mastigar.
It's a type of lizard found in Arabia. The hadith clarifies that its meat is halal.
Okay, but why would Ibn Umar, with all his knowledge, only narrate this one hadith?
That's the point. It shows the selective nature of hadith transmission.
They didn't just narrate everything they heard.
No. They were incredibly careful, focusing on transmitting hadiths they considered authentic, relevant, and necessary.
It's a reminder that it's not about quantity, it's about quality and accuracy. And it makes you think about how careful we should be about where we get our information from today.
Absolutely. This careful, selective approach to transmitting knowledge underscores the need to seek knowledge from reliable sources, individuals known for their integrity.
Okay, so trusting sources is crucial. But what about trusting leadership and authority? How did early Muslims navigate obedience and leadership?
Oh, Hadiths 373, 374, 375, and 376 give us some valuable insights into those questions. They provide a nuanced understanding of leadership, obedience, and the balance between following instructions and using moral judgment.
Okay, let's unpack those. What's the first scenario we encounter?
Hadith 373 tells us about a man who approaches the Prophet, passionately declaring his willingness to fight for Allah, even if it means being torn apart.
Wow, that's intense. He's ready to give his life for the cause.
Yes, it's a powerful statement, but the Prophet's response is surprising. Instead of praising him, he advises restraint.
Restraint.
He tells him, true striving in the cause of Allah involves fighting only when encountering the enemy.
So it's not about seeking out danger, it's about measured action.
Exactly. He emphasizes strategic action, discerning the right time and place for engaging in conflict. It's about wisdom over blind zeal.
It's a good reminder that even when we're passionate, we need to think strategically and weigh the consequences.
Now, Hadith 374 takes us into the world of Islamic governance. It introduces the concept of shura, or consultation.
Seeking counsel from knowledgeable people before making decisions.
Exactly, and the Hadith gives us an example. The Prophet is facing a crucial decision about the upcoming Battle of Uhud.
A major battle in early Islamic history.
He gathers his companions and asks for their advice. The main question is whether to defend within Medina or engage the enemy outside the city. Most companions advise staying within Medina, utilizing the city's fortifications.
Sounds like the logical choice.
It does, but the Prophet ultimately decides to engage the enemy outside the city.
So he goes against the majority. Why?
The Hadith doesn't explicitly say, but it highlights the importance of leadership that considers all viewpoints, but ultimately makes a decision based on what's believed to be best, even if it's unpopular.
It's a reminder that true leadership sometimes involves making tough choices, even when they're not what everyone wants.
Exactly. But even though the Prophet made a different choice, it still shows his respect for his companions' opinions. He valued their input and experience.
Okay, so consultation is important. What else do these hadiths tell us about leadership?
Hadith 375 focuses on appointing leaders. The Prophet instructs his companions to appoint strong and trustworthy individuals to lead detachments.
So strength and trustworthiness are key qualities for leadership.
Absolutely. Strength here means both physical capability and the ability to make tough decisions and protect the community. But it's not enough on its own. It has to be combined with trustworthiness. Honesty, integrity, and justice are essential.
It's about using power responsibly.
Exactly. And finally, Hadith 376 addresses a sensitive issue, correcting a leader who has error.
That can be tricky. How do you correct someone in authority without being disrespectful?
This hadith gives us a beautiful example. The Prophet is leading the prayer and accidentally performs 2 prostrations before finishing a surah.
Even the Prophet made mistakes.
Yes, it shows that no one is perfect. A companion named Gu Yadan, known for his careful observation, gently points out the mistake.
That must have taken courage.
It did, but he did it respectfully.
And how did the Prophet react?
He immediately acknowledged his mistake, corrected it, and thanked Dhul Yadain. He didn't get defensive at all.
That's true humility.
It shows how leaders should handle constructive criticism. It's about being open to correction and valuing feedback.
So we've explored a lot about leadership and obedience. What else do these hadiths have to teach us?
Well, the next set, Hadiths 377, 378, 379, and 380, focus on disseminating knowledge and conveying information accurately.
That's so crucial, especially today with misinformation everywhere.
Absolutely. Hadith 377 highlights the importance of messengers understanding and delivering messages correctly. The Prophet sends a messenger to a tribe with a specific message, but when the messenger arrives, he's forgotten part of it.
Oh no, the message is incomplete.
Exactly. And this leads the Prophet to emphasize how important it is for messengers to memorize and convey messages accurately. Clear communication, especially in religious matters, is essential.
Right, any miscommunication can have serious consequences.
And that's what Hadith 378 shows us. A messenger sent to Yemen to teach about Islam accidentally leaves out a crucial detail about the morning prayer. He tells them to pray 2 rakats instead of 4.
A big mistake.
Yes. And as a result, the people of Yemen continue praying incorrectly.
Wow, all because of one missing detail.
Exactly. When the Prophet learns about it, he sends Mu'adh bin Jabal to Yemen to clarify the correct way to pray.
He fixes the communication breakdown.
He does. And this hadith really emphasizes the Prophet's dedication to ensuring his teachings were conveyed accurately. It underscores the need for clarity, precision, and attention to detail when transmitting knowledge.
So important, especially religious knowledge.
Now, Hadith 379 focuses on the art of teaching and the power of repetition. A man asks the Prophet about the best type of charity. The Prophet tells him to give to his relatives. The man asks again, wanting to explore other options, but the Prophet repeats, give to your relatives.
He's sticking to that one key point.
Exactly. And this goes on. The man keeps asking, and the Prophet keeps emphasizing giving to relatives. This repetition drives home the message.
It's a reminder that effective teaching sometimes involves clear, focused repetition.
And finally, Hadith 380 addresses how to correct someone who has spread misinformation about religious rulings. A man from Bani Aslam is talking about the fast of Ashura, but he incorrectly states that it's obligatory.
So he's unintentionally spreading misinformation.
He is. And the Prophet, hearing this, gently corrects him, emphasizing that the fast is recommended, not obligatory.
So he corrects the mistake but does it kindly.
Exactly. It shows that correcting misinformation requires firmness but also compassion. We need to uphold the truth without being harsh.
These 4 hadiths are a powerful reminder of how crucial accurate communication is, especially in religion. We need to be careful about the information we spread and how we correct misinformation.
Absolutely. In today's world, with information overload and misinformation rampant, these lessons are more relevant than ever. We all need to be discerning, think critically, and ensure we're transmitting knowledge accurately and ethically.
It's fascinating how these stories, these teachings from centuries ago are still so relevant in our lives today.
You know, it really speaks to the enduring power of principles like trust, knowledge, and ethical conduct. They transcend time and cultures, connecting us all.
Absolutely. As we wrap up our deep dive into Sahih al-Bukhari, Book 91, I'm curious about how we can apply these principles to our own lives today.
It's that crucial question of so what, right? How do we make this ancient wisdom relevant to our modern lives? Well, Hadiths 381 and 382 give us a great starting point. They focus on the idea of amana, which encompasses trustworthiness, responsibility, and fulfilling obligations.
Amana. It sounds like a really deep concept. More than just simple honesty, it's about a commitment to integrity on a deeper level.
You're right, it is. And Hadith 381 really drives home the seriousness of betraying that trust. The Prophet says that even participating in the funeral prayer of someone who has betrayed a trust is a form of betrayal itself.
Wow, that's powerful. It's like saying that betraying trust is so serious, it even affects those around the betrayer.
Exactly. It highlights the ripple effect of such an action. It's not just a personal wrong, it's something that harms the community as a whole.
It makes sense. If you can't trust people, it creates suspicion and fear.
Right. Betraying trust breaks down relationships, families, even entire societies. It weakens the very foundation of human connection.
And Hadith 382 takes it a step further, talking about the consequences in the afterlife. It says that those who betray a trust will have a banner raised on the day of judgment, publicly announcing their betrayal.
Imagine that, your betrayal, exposed for all to see for eternity. It's a stark reminder that our actions have consequences that extend beyond this life.
These hadiths are really making me think about the importance of trustworthiness.
Me too. They remind us that honesty, integrity, and fulfilling our commitments are essential for building strong relationships and a just society.
So we've talked about trust. What about seeking knowledge?
Well, Hadiths 383 and 384 give us guidance on finding reliable sources of knowledge and putting that knowledge into action.
It's so easy to get lost in all the information out there today. How do we make sure we're getting guidance from the right sources?
Hadith 383 tells us about a group of people who asked the Prophet to appoint a teacher for them, someone to guide them in their understanding of Islam.
They were actively seeking knowledge and guidance.
They were, and the Prophet encouraged them to pursue that knowledge, to find those who could teach them. He affirmed their right to seek knowledge.
It's a reminder that we're not supposed to just sit back and wait for knowledge to come to us. We need to be proactive and seek it out.
Exactly. This hadith emphasizes the Islamic value of lifelong learning, of constantly seeking to grow in understanding and wisdom.
So it's not just about acquiring information, but about applying it to live a better life.
Exactly. And Hadith 384 gives a beautiful example of how knowledge and action work together. A man approaches the Prophet, confessing a sin and asking for guidance on how to atone.
He's seeking a way to find peace and forgiveness.
Yes. And the Prophet, instead of listing rituals or acts of penance, asks him, "Is your mother still alive?"
I remember this. It's such a surprising question. Why bring up his mother?
Because the Prophet recognized the profound bond between mother and child, he advised the man to show kindness and respect to his mother as a means of seeking forgiveness.
So it's about connecting our spiritual growth with our actions towards others, especially those closest to us.
Exactly. It's about putting faith into practice through kindness, compassion, and respect. It's not just about abstract beliefs.
And that leads us to our final hadith, Hadith 385, the Hadith of Jibril.
Ah, yes. This hadith is considered a foundational text, outlining the core principles of Islam in a concise and profound way. It tells the story of the angel Jibril, disguised as a man, approaching the Prophet and asking him a series of questions about Islam, faith, and excellence.
A truly momentous encounter. So what were the teachings that the Prophet shared?
He began by defining Islam as encompassing 5 pillars: belief in Allah, prayer, zakat, fasting, and performing Hajj, if one is able.
The core practices that form the basis of a Muslim's life.
Yes. Then he moved on to faith, defining it as belief in Allah, His angels, His books, His messengers, the Day of Judgment, and divine decree.
So it's about believing in God's plan and accepting His will.
Exactly. And finally, he addressed Ihsan, or excellence, defining it as worshipping Allah as if you see him, and if you don't see him, knowing that he sees you.
That's so beautiful. It's about living with awareness and intention, knowing that God is always present.
Exactly. It's striving for excellence in every aspect of life, aligning our thoughts, words, and actions with our values and our understanding of God's will.
This hadith is a beautiful reminder of the essence of Islam and the principles that guide us towards a meaningful life.
It is, and it's a fitting way to conclude our deep dive into Sahih al-Bukhari, Book 91. We've explored the importance of trust, knowledge, ethical conduct, and the need to seek guidance from reliable sources. These timeless principles, as seen in the lives of the Prophet and his companions, offer us a roadmap for navigating our own lives.
This has been an amazing journey through these hadiths. As we wrap up, I'm left feeling inspired and ready to apply these teachings to my own life.
May we all strive to embody these qualities of trustworthiness, knowledge-seeking, and ethical conduct, contributing to a better world where trust flourishes, knowledge is shared responsibly, and communities are built on integrity and understanding.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Sahih al-Bukhari. May you continue to seek knowledge from reliable sources and apply it to your life. Until next time, peace be upon you all.